And a big welcome to you all for this 5 p.m. session. I think it's the final session in an intense day. Over the next 45 minutes, we hope to have a sort of a packed discussion with you, consisting of feedback, questions, dialogue on the film that we're about to show you. This is a kind of a premiere. It's the premiere of this film in London. It was made 3.5 years ago in Kibera, one of Nairobi's largest informal settlements, in fact, one of Africa's largest informal settlements. We were working there with support from the UK Met Office WISER programme, and we came across an outstandingly talented filmmaker living in the communities that we were supporting. He actually went to a film school in Kibera, and he worked with our partners, Concrete Design Initiative, on a number of awareness-raising films to generate demand and interest in the new weather forecasts and early warnings we were co-producing. But we then turned to him and said, would you make a film about the project? So this is the film that we're going to see. It was made during COVID. It was edited by the filmmaker. His name is Ondevo, in his very modest edit room in a very simple dwelling in Kibera. We provided post-production support from the UK. This is the film, so let's take a look. Could we also...
DARAJA project has helped us a lot. It has connected us as community leaders. It has connected us with other institutions.
For the past 2 years, James has been working to build a unique bridge between Nairobi's weather forecasters and his community. The word for bridge in Swahili is DARAJA. This is the story of DARAJA and the story of James. Nairobi is the capital city of Kenya and the country's political and economic hub. It is home to almost 5 million people. Many of Nairobi's residents live in unplanned neighborhoods, also referred to as slums or informal settlements. Kibera is one of Africa's most renowned informal settlements and amongst Nairobi's largest. Over the last couple of years, it has been observed that Nairobi's weather and climate are changing. Nairobi is expected to experience rising temperatures and is already experiencing changes in its 2 main rainy seasons, which has led to longer dry spells than usual. James is one of Kibera's community leaders, living and working on the front line of Nairobi's shifting climate.
My name is James Kirika. I'm a Weather Mtaani leader. Weather Mtaani is a group of community leaders who interpret and translate the weather forecast that comes from the Kenya Meteorological Department into a simple language that people in Kibera can easily understand. I became a Weather Mtaani leader after I was elected to represent my area, and I represent them in the DARAJA project. So I arrange events around for cleaning our drainages because our drainages sometimes are blocked. So we do some cleanup events around.
Initially, there was a big gap between the community and other stakeholders. So DARAJA through KDA has played a major role in bringing the community and all the stakeholders together.
We started with a workshop where we were looking at what are the kind of messages that we receive from Kenya Meteorological Department. How is it understood? So we started with a program on how to interpret that information in a way that people can be able to digest it and they can be able to use it.
So we've been working with the DARAJA project for some time now on co-design or co-developing of products specifically for Nairobi County. And this was to be able to show us what kind of information is needed by our users within the county
people in my community did not care about the weather forecast because one, it was not relevant to this area. It was just talking about the whole of Nairobi. Secondly, the language used was too technical.
So we needed to put the forecast in a format that was more useful for them and that they would appreciate. We finally came up with icons, and so that's what we currently use today. From simply giving Word document with press form and no icons to what we can see right now. Most of them were impacted by heavy rainfall, which resulted in flooding. Initially, we'd also give monthly forecasts and even just a weekly forecast. And through interaction again with the users, we were helped to see that they would appreciate even a daily forecast. And so today we give them both a weekly and a daily forecast.
So we get the weather forecast from the Kenya Meteorological Department, and after we translate it into a language that we commonly use here around, that is Sheng and Kiswahili, so that people can understand it, and it's also short.
Watabiri wa hali ya hewa KMD wametangaza mchana kutakuwa na mvua kwa wiki nzima isipokuwa Monday. Tunawashauri mfungue mitaro, mvae jacket na mchunge watoto wasicheze karibu na mtu. #RadaWeather.
After we convert the forecast into SMS, we send the SMS to other members of the community. That includes our friends, our families, our neighbors, so it gets to spread all over.
And so just at a glance, a user is able to see what to expect, and they don't need to spend a lot of time reading through a forecast.
Safi, nataka tuingie katika sehemu ya pili na kuangazia taarifa ya hali ya hewa. Kumbuka kwamba ni makala ambayo inaletwa kwako kwa hisani ya Pamoja FM. Unajua mtaalamu anaitwa James mwenyewe.
James, karibu katika studio.
I usually attend various radio shows among the local stations which are located around here.
Sehemu za line sadha. Maana hapo unasikia wanakuita weatherman. Weatherman awali kabla ya mradi huu, manake wale ambao watabiri wa hali ya hewa walikuwa naitwa waongo.
Bila tu umesema, mimi mwenyewe pia nilikuwa naonelea hiyo habari ikiwa ya uongo. Hiyo ni kitu. Lakini baadaye venye tukaendelea tukianza hii project, tukaanza kuona umuhimu yake.
This program has been of much importance to our audiences or our listeners, particularly the Kibera community, because from this program they can get daily weather reports so that they can also plan for their day. So there is much understanding if you compare the situation on the ground right now in comparison with what it used to be sometimes back.
And seeing DARAJA make that first step of providing climate information to communities and asking them to act on this information has really changed the perspective and the effects of disasters.
The DARAJA project has helped my community in various ways. Now people are more keen on the weather forecast. They want to know how the weather is going to be so that they can plan their daily activities. So it has helped us a lot. The DARAJA project means a lot to me because it has made me realize the importance of having access to weather information, and not only having access but using the information. I believe that we are going to continue providing the information to our community, and I believe and I hope also that probably we are going to continue working together in one way or another so that we make our communities safe from extreme weather conditions.
thank you very much. And it's nice to direct that applause at Ondevo, who was the director, the editor, the script writer, who commissioned the music for that film. So, made in Kibera, brought to you in London. Let's talk about the film, and I invite my fellow panelists to come forward and take their seats. So let me introduce the panelists to you. I have on my far left, I have John Harding, who is the head of Secretariat for the Cruise Initiative, which many of you are highly familiar with. Welcome, John. Then I have my good colleague Sunaina Sen, who is the Program Manager for DARAJA, who will be pleased to update you as to where DARAJA is currently, 2 or 3 years on. Next to me I have Uzma Solomon, who is the Associate Director of Community Jamil, and we're going to find out a little bit about what Community Jamil does as well during this session. I have on my right Helen Kawi, who is the Deputy Chief Meteorologist, International Meteorologist for the Met Office, noting that this session is also convened by the Met Office WISER program. And then finally, I have Caroline Zastero, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You are the global lead based in the British Red Cross on climate action, correct? Fantastic. So I'd like to start with Helen. Can you just give us a quick hit, a bit of feedback on the film? What does it say to you, first?
So I think the first thing, when you said a short, summary, I think it just shows you the power of community and understanding what that community needs and the language or the manner that they need it in, and the trust between the community and KMD and the other partners to accept that and to let that develop.
Power of community, yes. That's not something I hear all the time coming from the Met Office. Very respectfully, where do you think this fits in with the approaches that the WISER program is embracing and standing for?
Yeah, so I think it absolutely fits in with what we want WISER to do. So the whole aim of WISER is to improve the use of and the access to enhanced weather and climate information services. And it's about understanding what those are for different communities, different hazards, different vulnerabilities, and different geographies. So WISER initially started off focused in East Africa, but now has expanded WISER Africa to cover Eastern, Southern Africa, West Africa. It will be across Asia and the Pacific, as well as the Middle East and North Africa. So across those regions, you're going to have a vast array of different needs, different experiences, and so on. And that absolutely has to be led then by the people involved in those circumstances and settings. And that's where this whole idea of the co-production element that really a lot of what WISER is founded on comes back to be based upon. So it's about bringing together both the producers and the users of weather and climate information services to understand what the users need from those people producing it, and to listen to them, to talk about the language, the experience, how it's interpreted, and how it's to be used for. What are the vulnerabilities and the mitigations that you're trying to put in place to improve the kind of response to hazardous weather or changing climate. We saw some of the power in this about, using different mechanisms to kind of, look at the ways that we disseminate information through the process. So the power of the different communication mechanisms, it was through the text messaging, through radio, and so on. And that just shows that you need to kind of innovate almost as well in the processes that you use. So switching from a predominantly text-based forecast to something as simple as graphical images that are accessible then to those communities, and allowing that to be simple can be very, very effective. And then paying particular attention in Wiser to those people disproportionately affected by the impacts of weather and climate. So somewhere like, you know, Kibera, that is absolutely going to have more people vulnerable and exposed to those elements, then it's really important that we make sure that any of the services are fit for, you know, their kind of needs. And that ultimately we want to work through these places to increase the capacity and actually to ensure that anything we put together is sustainable. You know, so to hear that 2 years later, 3 years later, that James is still working with KMD and that this has been tried and tested now, and that Resurgence are looking to scale this up to other areas through, you know, the next phases of Wiser, is absolutely then those kind of foundation principles that we want to build in.
That's great to hear, and I think you're sort of filling in some gaps that don't come across in the film, but are equally important to the work of the Met Office Wiser programme and to DARAJA. One notable one being, of course, that we don't just work on early warning. We're working on weather and climate services, and within that, early warning plays a key role. But these are broader services. They're daily, weekly, monthly, seasonal forecasts.
Yeah, and those the adaptations,
Yeah.
the mitigations, the use, and that eventually applied across the seamless timescale, the same actors and players involved across that value chain. It's really important to recognise.
Fantastic. So I'd like to turn now to Caroline, and I'm sure you noted the comment by your Red Cross colleague in the film. You've been working with the Red Cross. I think you've also been working in both Kenya and Nigeria. A sort of a headline reaction from you to the film, and then it would be great to hear from you on where this fits and what issues it throws up for you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me on the panel. So, yeah, you saw my colleague Emma from the Kenya Red Cross in the movie, and I myself haven't been involved in this project. But my first reaction when seeing the movie, I was like, I know exactly what he's talking about, because having tried to do community early warning system trainings with Red Cross volunteers and communities in Kenya and Nigeria, the same things that he mentioned always come up as well, about trust and understanding that forecasts are too technical, and about, you know, it being relevant for their specific context. And just to give you one example, so, you know, that we were talking about like different formats and communication channel. I have a funny story. One of the kind of exercise we do when we do community early warning trainings is about that role, especially that the Red Cross often has, about the communication and dissemination of their early warnings. And so who here remembers from their childhood birthday parties ever played the game Silent Post, or in English it's called Chinese Whisper? Like, hands up? Yeah, okay. Next time you design an early warning message, I encourage you with like at least 10 people, but preferable like 30 people, to test your message by doing a Chinese whisper. It's hilarious what comes out of it. We have done this in the trainings, and the thing that comes out at the end is like completely different than what you put in at the beginning. And we played this twice. Once just, you know, giving a typical message that the Met Office would issue with, you know, so-and-so percentage of like rainfall, with that probability, you know, blah, 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 where and what actions and advice. We gave that message and like went through the Chinese whisper or Silent Post. Complete chaos at the end, and then we tried it another one, and interestingly that worked much better already. So talking about like accessible format, so instead of giving word, we did it like a pantomime, so they had to like act out the action, you know, like the rain coming and then the flooding and then the early one, and that one worked much better, because they at least could remember much better the message they had to give out. Still quite a lot got lost in the chain, so again, keep that in mind about like how to have to communicate again and again. So yeah, basically my main reaction was like I could really resonate with the things that he mentioned about like the challenge of like translating and interpreting an early warning message to people that is relevant to them. That trust that needs to be built in that message, because often people, because they don't understand the message, what they receive at the end is not what actually happens. So then they say, oh, the message was wrong. But actually maybe, you know, it was just the understanding and like passing it down the chain that they didn't know. And then the third one was about actually that impact-based forecast for that location, so if the Met Office gives a forecast for Nairobi or Lagos in Nigeria where we worked about this much level of rain, that might just be a bit of rain in one location, but in that location it's probably going to mean houses underwater and livelihoods lost. So knowing that context and translating that is so important. So yeah, great movie.
Yes, absolutely, Caroline. So perhaps, rather than lost in translation, it's found in translation and contextualization and advisories, which actually at times identify a local threshold that's not really on the radar of the National Early Warning System. Yes. I'm going to invite you, the audience, both here in the room and online, to feedback and ask any questions you might have about the approach, about James himself. But before I do, I'd like to turn to Uzma and ask you, Uzma. Well, first of all, tell us about Community Jameel. I think we don't know you as well as Cruz or the Red Cross, obviously. So share some headlines with us about your work.
Yes, thank you so much, firstly, for including myself and Community Jameel in the panel. So Community Jameel, we're a philanthropic initiative of the Jameel family. So for those of you, all of you who are in London, if you ever go to the V&A, our sister organization runs the Islamic Art Gallery there. And they also do a prize for Arab contemporary artists as well, called the Jameel Prize. But we at Community Jameel, we focus on the advancement of science and learning for communities to thrive. So we work with academic institutions to set up these big centers of excellence that focus on very specific thematic areas. You may have heard of the one at Imperial College London, the Jameel Institute, led by Professor Neil Ferguson, who, whether or not you like it or not, was doing a lot of the modeling for the COVID lockdowns. And then probably the most well-known is the Jameel Poverty Action Lab, JPAL, which sits out of MIT and has an affiliate model across the globe. And they run randomized controlled trials to evaluate poverty reduction programs. So that's us. Well-known in certain circles, but very unknown in others.
Thank you. And your reaction to the film, how does it speak to you?
Yeah, so I don't want to repeat what everyone's saying, because I think we can all see the value in communication and localization. So I'll say it talk about it from the lens of like a funder or philanthropic funder at that. And I think, so we have one center, you can see from the film, it's not rocket science, but if you don't have proper communication and localization, all of these structures just don't work. So we have one center in Kenya called the Jameel Observatory for Food Security and Early Action, which is housed at the International Livestock and Research Institute. And they basically conduct research to look at early warning systems and forecast-based action for the dry lands of East Africa, looking at kind of pastoral communities specifically. And it's led by a Kenyan scientist who's also from a pastoral family named Dr. Guyoroba. I think when we first, launched it 2 years ago, we were like, oh, we want something shiny and big. We want to fund some new initiative, and then we worked with Save the Children and Oxfam to understand why early warning systems weren't working, and can we create a new system. And after the research, we found out it was just really a lack of communication. You don't need to create something; you just need to fix it. And so we've been, over the past 2 years, building a community of practice where we bring together voices across the spectrum, including pastoralist voices, and try and build those trusts. And so we've given the Jameel Observatory a bucket of funding and asked the community to develop, actionable problems, and then developing research based on the feedback that we get from this community of practice, rather than saying, let's build something shiny and new, or let's fund research that we specifically as a funder find more interesting or relevant. But it's been, and that research that's come out has been really interesting, because it's not something that we set out, 2 years. It's very different than the big shiny thing that I think we had originally pushed for.
So not the big shiny thing, but I guess you'd agree with me that we have common cause in that it's in our interest, under DARAJA, to have the best possible weather and climate service for the pastoralist communities in Kenya, because we don't want them to fail. as pastoralists and to move into the cities. So we want to share the methodologies as much as we can with colleagues such as Dr. Guillaume, because one of the problems is that there is this drain from the land into the cities. So it's in our interest, I think, to share our methodologies with your colleague working under the Geneva Observatory. Yeah, yes. Thank you. So over to the audience. What does the film throw up for you in terms of questions? What doesn't it say? What would you like to know more about? Any thoughts? Mariana.
Hi, really great film, really great conversations. I was wondering what's happening next. You've mentioned DARAJA in the kind of next phase and scaling up. Where are you taking this? Are there any different challenges in terms of working in other informal settlements that you're experiencing or anticipating? Or is this a replication and scale and that it's basically just trying to reach more people in new informal settlements?
Thank you. Mariana, I think I'm going to update you on James because I did speak with him yesterday and what's happening next in Nairobi, but I'm going to let my colleague Sunaina respond to the question of where next in terms of the bigger picture for DARAJA.
Thank you, Ma. So we are currently, we've just started a new project under the next phase of WISER funding in East Africa. So what we saw in the movie was James from Nairobi and sort of projected what we did in Nairobi. From there, we've now taken a regional approach to it. So we're scaling up to the region, and that includes 5 countries, so 5 major cities in East Africa. So that's Kampala, Addis Ababa, which are our 2 main focus cities. We will continue working in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, building upon what we did previously. And we have slightly similar, but an offshoot, which is in Khartoum, or rather all of Sudan, and I'll allow Mark to talk a little bit more about that because it has been a complicated situation, as you can imagine. But yeah, so that is where we are in terms of the cities that we're working in. In terms of what we're doing in terms of, like, are we replicating, are we reaching more people, are we doing something new? All of them. So we're doing all of it. So we're definitely reaching more people collectively because it's, you know, it's a regional project. We are replicating the elements of DARAJA that worked really well the last time, so what we saw in Nairobi. What we are bringing new to the project this time is actually 3 things. So one is DARAJA in its core is tackling information as the vehicle to improve resilience. However, information is not the only thing that's required for building resilience. Information is very critical, but not the only thing. So this time we are introducing a very important component, which is working with the community to develop response action plans. So sort of like what you said about working with the community and sort of doing these early warning trainings. Sort of like that, but yes, so allowing the community to design an action plan for themselves and working with stakeholders like Red Cross and others in the city to sort of join in that endeavor and provide other sorts of resources that are required for building resilience, or at least at the very least responding to extreme weather events. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we are also focusing on extreme heat this time. So it's not to say that we didn't focus on it last time. I think what happened last time was there was organically a lot more focus on flooding as an issue than heat, because we took a co-production approach, and the community, I think, definitely felt flooding as an issue that has a significant impact in their lives. So that just organically happened to be the route we took. So a lot of the interventions we had were based on flooding. However, this time around, over the last 3 years since when we finished the project that you saw in the movie, And now we have heard community members talk a lot more about extreme heat as an issue. So community members we know are talking more about it. We've also heard from forecasters from KMD, TMA, Kenya Met Department, Tanzania Meteorological Authority, as well as Uganda Meteorological Authority, saying that extreme heat for them is emerging as an issue, and they would like to build products and services catering to that. So that is another component that we are introducing this time, which is sort of new. And the third one is we're also starting to look at the feasibility of a smartphone weather app in the region. Maybe not all the 5 countries we're working in, but at least 1 or 2 who are potentially a little further ahead in their technological advancement when it comes to the meteorological sciences. So that's another one. We're not promising we will come up with a smartphone app by the end of it, but we're going to start looking at the feasibility of it.
Thank you, Sunaina. Just very briefly on Sudan, yes, the situation has changed dramatically and tragically there. In a way, the information on Sudan might sit better in the previous session with Catalina Jaime on conflict, but what we have essentially done is redesigned it, the program, as a national program, and taken, I think, a few pages from the playbook of the humanitarian information practice area and the work of CDAC, the Communicating with Disaster Affected Communities group. So we have been working to support the Sudanese Meteorological Agency, which really has had its infrastructure and its personnel incredibly damaged and fractured, to provide a remote forecasting and early warning service that has that kind of wiser co-design element. We do have a Sudanese community partner, then a dissemination and feedback component. And we are, again, borrowing from the playbook of the humanitarians, doing our utmost not to suppress in-country capacity. So as SNA does regroup, it's now got an office in Port Sudan. Some of its forecasters are in Cairo. Some of them are in ICPAC in Nairobi. Is to try to reinforce and draw on their capacity over time so that we don't suppress that key in-country capacity. And so we're working to get that service off the ground over the coming months, and to do it in a collaborative, integrated way with crews and the WMO, as there are several Sudan-related initiatives. So we've kind of moved somewhat away from the purely urban focus, admittedly, and we think the situation warrants that, partly because there's been an urban exodus, particularly from Khartoum across the country. I will let you think about another question if you have one. There is a hand up. I think it's from Brian, right? Yes. I don't have my distance glasses on, by the way, Brian, but I think it's you. Right. Yeah.
Okay, what I was going to say. Okay. Right. Better? Yeah, what struck me was the importance of the guy, the person concerned.
Yeah.
Not only that he was keen, he spoke the language, he fitted in. They trusted him. You need somebody like that in every community.
Yeah.
How do you identify them? They've got to have sufficient capability, skill to understand the information themselves, but they've also got to understand what the capability of the people they're talking to is. They've got to have a presence. I mean, he was great on radio. He was great on designing the icons, or at least, I don't know if he designed them, but yeah, key person And
Yeah.
how do you grow those key people?
Right. It's a great question, and I guess a slight preamble to answering it is that there's a danger when you make a film because you do need to make it relatable and you work for an individual. But actually, it is fair to say that he was working with a group, community leaders. But I'm going to invite my colleague Sunena to answer the question: how do we reach the communities and ultimately find James and other community leaders like him?
Yeah, so so the model that we use is, so the approach of DARAJA is to work with trusted community organizations. So these are organizations, so in the movie in Nairobi, we worked with Kunkui Design Initiative, so that's KDI. They are like physically located within Kibera. They've been present there for several years. So over time, they have built significant trust within the community, and they've been working on other projects. So through that, they have also developed a network of community members themselves. So that's the first step. We identify the right community partner, so the right community development organization to partner with. And then through them, we identify the network of community members we can work with. Now, as Mark said, although the movie focused on James as the protagonist, James was representing several leaders who were a part of the project. Now, in terms of how do we identify that group, it's a mix of existing social relationships in the community, existing social power dynamics, but also volunteers who was available, who was willing to participate. So that's sort of one level of selection, if I can use that word. In terms of capability, and I think that's a question, that's a very important question, and one that we have been asked a few times. Now, these community members don't work with us because they already come with the capability or knowledge or understanding of meteorology. It's something we work with them to develop over the course of the project. So we have several training sessions where forecasters from the meteorological authorities work with them directly to sort of build a common language that the meteorologists understand, but also community members understand. So we have several different kinds of training that happen. We also have journalist training. So the journalists are also more capable of, or like better equipped to present the weather forecasts and stories around weather and climate. But also community members are a part of that training, so they also get a little flavor of what it is to be on air, for example, and how to interact. So yeah, so some of them do have a slightly higher level of understanding of forecasts, but that's not really our starting point. It's that through the project we're working with them and working to develop that understanding.
Thank you for the question, Brian, and the answer, Sunena. I'd add that we are trying to work structurally and strategically. So strategically, for instance, would mean increasingly looking to Slum Dwellers International and their network across Africa and the Global South for their affiliates, because we know already that their partners will be working on the ground in the cities. And structurally, we look to, for instance, the Red Cross. So the Red Cross increasingly has branches in cities. They are a key actor in the national and urban system. So we will look for the Red Cross as well. And it's through those, we'll bring them into the system for the co-design, for the design of the dissemination of feedback systems. We are doing it, as I say, in a kind of a structured manner now. But I think we're glad that we can sort of on the ground floor, as it were, didn't start with the global strategic partnerships or went the other way around. I think it's more meaningful to be doing that now. I'd like now to turn to John Harding. And yes, John, you're based in Geneva. You're heading up the Cruise Secretariat. You have a huge mandate, and it would be good, first of all, just at a personal level, how does the film strike you? How do you react to it? What you see in there, and then thinking professionally. Yes, where does it fit? Where does it resonate with your mandate and mission, and the the large and growing portfolio of programs that you're managing.
No, thanks. Obviously, I'll echo previous interventions. I hope you can hear me okay at this late stage. But no, it's a very nice video. I'll have to admit, I'm very easily impressed as soon as any kind of video you do. I'm like, wow. But having said that, no, this one I didn't realize the filmmaker was local, and I think I understand better now why this film has that sensitivity, is really anchored into manages to capture the local context so well. So congratulations, and I think we've been talking a lot today about how can we scale up and enhance, and often we say we need to get better at documenting what works well in these kind of examples. And I think this is a very nice example of that. I mean, I'm familiar with the work of DARAJA. Yeah. I didn't discover it through this film, and I've been fortunate to see what's the excellent work you've been doing, and in the broader context of the wider program, which pushing forward this co-production, co-design concepts. And we benefit obviously from, it's a wide range of actors who benefit from that thinking. But it's not always easy to translate, really understand exactly what that means, and I think that film addresses that. So you come out of that and you understand, okay, so how do you translate certain visuals into something that's understandable by the community? How do you make, address the language challenges that you may face, and so how do you work in informal settlements, which is a big challenge for national local authorities. It's not their natural environment with their set up. So I think the film sort of helps to understand that, and so I think in that regard, if something we'd like to, but I think they're saying no, we'd like to see more of this, and we certainly like to scale up across our programs and the work we do.
Thank you, John. That's great to hear. I'm just wondering if there are any questions online by any chance. Has been nodded to the negative, I think. Yeah, and time is moving on. So let me just update you on James, because I think that was maybe 2 years ago. So James, I met him last week in Nairobi. He continues to run with the team, the Wedamtani service. They are connected with the Kenya Met and receive forecasts. Those forecasts come to them in a WhatsApp group. When the forecasts are delayed, then the members of the WhatsApp group that include the media and the gentleman from the city board, city authorities, so they feed back and complain to the meteorologists saying the forecast is late, it's raining, and we want to know, we need to plan for this. They're continuing with the cleanups. They're funding, the community group has found a way of generating revenue to pay for the time of the volunteers that relay the SMSs and do the cleanups. So they do car washes using equipment that was purchased through a very modest grant from a South African foundation. So they found a way of financing that local relay work, that found in translation work, right, and the cleanups, because there is a cost in time and in materials to the preparedness work. And they remain connected to the KMD forecasters, many of whom are, they are now in their national delegations at the COPs. They are climate scientists. Some of them are IPCC authors. Across the way in Dar es Salaam, the head of the TMA has become the vice chair of the IPCC. This system, which we thought was localized and purely urban, has grown a larger dimension. It is ongoing 3 years after the funding. There is a bit of fatigue around the forecasts, particularly fatigue during this period when the rainy seasons were disrupted. There was a prolonged drought. The weather kind of got boring, right? And weather information is linked to all information and linked to consumption culture as well. So there is a bit of fatigue. There is probably a need for a new campaign, and I think there is probably a need to acknowledge there are digital kind of development, and smartphone is an opportunity. But it is there, it's still ongoing, yeah. So that's the headline from James. I don't think I'm going to get between anyone and the pizzas. I'm being waved at by Karina, and I'm thinking we should wrap up now. We've got another film, yes. So I think with that, I'm going to thank the audience for your keen interest and some great questions, and for the fabulous panelists for such thoughtful insights and encouragement. So thank you, everybody.